our state has lost over $500 million. Maybe y'all saw the news out of Nebraska today. Our state has, in fact, gone bankrupt. Due to his tariffs and the loss of all of our migrant farm workers, our state has lost over $500 million. It's so bad that Governor Pillen had to call and ask him for a bailout, and we don't know if he's going to give it to us. My husband and I did used to own a farm here in Nebraska, and thanks to the loss of all the workers, we went bankrupt, and bankruptcies in our state overall are at a record high right now. It's still just so weird to me because we all voted red. Nebraska, every county, every district overwhelmingly voted red, and that seems to have been the reason that we're all out of business now. And that just doesn't make that much sense to me. If you vote for a party, shouldn't they protect you? Shouldn't they pass policies that will help you stay out of bankruptcy? And it's not just the farms, but the whole state is going under because we voted red. When you're a farming family like mine, I can see now that it is important to think before you vote.
Nebraska going into bankruptcy because of self-inflicted damage. They were team firing over here, saying, you know what, everybody pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Our ideology is nobody should get anything that they don't deserve. Now they want a bailout. They're asking for socialism. Socialism bad until I need socialism. Get the fuck out of here, dude.
So maybe this is another unpopular opinion, but I feel like you should have to live with the repercussions of your vote. And if you don't want to live with the repercussions of your vote, maybe you should actually vote a different way. But if you do vote that way, then you should have to live with that repercussion of your vote. And if it causes you to go bankrupt and for you to lose everything, then so be it. That is on you. So I hope going forward that you've learned from this and that you will vote a different way and vote for something that actually is for your best interest. Most likely you probably won't. I guess we'll see.
What's up, my beautiful people, and welcome back to my channel. So right now, the states of Nebraska and Montana are facing an economic disaster like never before. Bankruptcy is on record high. The farms are failing. Businesses are shutting down, and local economies are collapsing. Why? Because of the very policies these red states overwhelmingly voted for. President Trump's tariffs and immigration restrictions have hit these states harder than most realize, and now they are begging the federal government for bailouts. Let's have a look, then come back with a complete analysis about this topic, alright? And if you're new here, kindly consider subscribing so you never miss any update from my videos. Let's dive into it.
Whoa, it looks like Nebraska is broke. Yes, Nebraska is facing a $500 million deficit shortage. Yes, they're in trouble. And this from a state that just a few years ago had a huge budget surplus, largely because of pandemic money. But what did they do with it? How smart were they? Well, they did the stupid, typical Republican thing. Oh, we got all this money. Let's cut taxes. Let's cut taxes. Let's cut taxes. So what's happened? Yes, their revenues have fallen, and now they can't sell goods because other countries don't want to buy their farming goods. So they're now stuck. And now they have to go beg to the federal government, please bail us out. Please bail us out. Yes, Nebraska, you are under the typical Republican rule where you just think cutting taxes is going to be the answer. Well, cutting taxes and being rude to other countries doesn't seem to pay, does it? And now you're stuck. And now you have a $500 million shortage. And you have no one to blame but yourselves. Nice job, Nebraska.
Nebraska's GDP is down 6%, and farmers are struggling. And Congressman Don Bacon says tariffs aren't helping. Corn is one of the things Nebraska is best known for, but right now, it's a crop that isn't guaranteeing a profit for some farmers. The Nebraska Farm Bureau tracks crop prices. In July 2022, it was selling for more than $7 a bushel. That's now dropped to less than $5. Soybeans went from $16 to $10 in the same time frame. Bacon says tariffs are only exacerbating the issue, and he says it's time for Congress to reclaim its authority over tariff policy.
Putting tariffs on 80 different countries, is that an emergency power or is that tariff policy? I think that's tariff policy. And tariff policy is under the purview of Congress. And I think it's time that Congress bring this authority back.
Bacon says he doesn't believe the majority support behind the effort is there yet, but he expects it will be a good debate in September.
It's Joe from Georgia. So we're getting ready for the first domino to fall, and we know what happens after the first one falls. Well, the state of Nebraska, the governor, Jim Pillen, has asked the federal government for help because they're not going to be able to pay their bills this year. And here's the problem in Nebraska. They had over a $2 billion contract with the Chinese government to export soybeans to China. Well, out of that $2 billion, they've canceled all the contracts. So out of that $2 billion, $350 million was state revenue taxes. They're not getting any of that. And the governor also goes on to say that because the migrant farmers weren't able to work in Nebraska this summer, that those people didn't pay their taxes either. And the farmers who already have crops in the ground, folks, they've already spent their money. They're going to need help too because they're not getting any money from the contracts anymore. So Nebraska is the first state. And when you look at the Midwest, you're probably looking at Kansas, you're looking at Iowa, South Dakota, all of those places that are large exporters of grains to China and depend on migrant farm labor. They're not going to be able to pay their bills either. So here's the first one to fall. But of course, as we do know, a certain person in a certain house in Washington, D.C. at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, they know all about bankruptcy. I'm sure they'll be able to help.
Now, apparently, Montana and Nebraska has a lot of farmers that are about to go bankrupt, which is probably going to bankrupt the economy in those states, which is probably going to bankrupt the states. Now, normally, I'm not one who is happy about this stuff, but I'm really not happy that they are going bankrupt. Let's put that out there. But they get what they voted for. Soybean farmers, they got what they voted for. They voted for him before. They had to get loans because he screwed them over. And they voted for him again. Do you understand the level of either delusion or uneducation to vote for the same guy who screwed you twice? Those people are what we call, what P.T. Barnum used to call fools. And it's, like the saying goes, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And they should be shamed. They should be shamed of their decisions and what they've done. They got what they voted for. A con man who doesn't care about them and will do everything to bankrupt this country because it'll make real estate prices cheaper for him and his billionaire friends to buy.
So, Nebraska, a red state, done went bankrupt. Do we care? No, because we don't care. No, we don't care. We don't feel sorry for the farmers. We don't feel sorry. You understand? We don't care because you all didn't care. Do you understand what I'm saying? What I hate, what I dislike, what gets on my nerve, what burns my ass crack is that these people going through what they going through at their own hand because they're ignorant and didn't do the right research, didn't think things through, but most importantly, they didn't care because they thought it wouldn't affect them. It wouldn't touch them. They didn't give a damn. Now you want to cry and boo. Don't fucking cry. This is what you wanted, right? This is what you voted for, right? Then you need to take that shit in and love on it. You better love every bit of that bankruptcy. Losing your farm, can't find a job, can't get workers, losing your land, losing your livelihood. You better love every bit of it because that is what the fuck you voted for because you didn't give a damn about nobody else being hurt. But you bet not ask us to give a damn about y'all because we don't.
You know, migrant farm workers are the backbone of agriculture in America. And now without them, the crops are rotting in the fields. But here is a kicker. These are some of the states that voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump in the last election. They have been hurt not once, but twice by the very leader they put back in office because they chose to vote out of racism than economics. You know, racism is expensive, and we are seeing it today, and it doesn't pay. Nebraska and Montana are agriculture powerhouses, you know. They rely heavily on migrant workers for harvesting crops like corn, wheat, and vegetables, you know. But when Trump's immigration crackdowns took effect, tens of thousands of migrant workers couldn't make it to work because they were afraid of being detained by the ICE. So what happened? Local farmers are not only struggling to harvest, but they are also facing higher cost and lower demand for their products. The results? Economic collapse, you know. Farms are going bankrupt. Supply chains is being disrupted. In other words, they are paying the price for policies that were meant to make America great again, but instead, they have made their livelihoods crumble. You know, they didn't want the idea of a black woman being in office, you know. The idea of having a black woman in the White House was for them unacceptable. So they ignored the facts, you know. They ignored their own economic well-being and voted against their own interest.
I know right now, people, it's hard to find some joy in some things, but what I find joy in is I just watched a video on Montana where the Montana farmers are going bankrupt. I think the state voted 100% districts to what's going on now, so fuck them. And then I look at Nebraska and see all the farmers crying about how they're losing everything, and then I look at Nebraska and how much they voted for this and how the farmers endorsed all this, and I say, fuck them. And then I'm watching the soybean farmers crying about how they can't export soybeans anymore because nobody wants them and they're losing money. But they supported this. Fuck them. Then I saw a video on vegetable farmers in Alabama that all their crops are going rotten because they don't have anybody to work the fields, but they voted for this, so fuck them. You all got what you voted for. Fuck you. We tried to tell you.
Well, the state of Nebraska and their Governor Pilling is asking Donald Trump for help. See, the state of Nebraska is facing bankruptcy. Why are they facing bankruptcy? Well, let me tell you why. Because of the tariffs and farmland, they can't afford anything, and a lot of bad state business decisions. Now remember, Nebraska is straight red. They are Republican through and through. And now they're about to go bankrupt because of tariffs, farmland, and not doing the right thing with their money. So Governor Pilling is asking Donald Trump for help. No word if Trump will help him. See, this is what happens when states don't do the right thing and the federal government don't tell the states, no, 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 you can't do this. So Nebraska, who loves nothing but MAGAs and Republicans, that's fine. You have that right. Now you're going bankrupt. And every state must balance their budget every year. Nebraska's in trouble. They are actually in the red. And I mean in the red big time because of poor decisions.
What can you say about this latest FAFO regarding Montana and Nebraska farmers going bankrupt and having to close their farms? I mean, this is what you guys voted for, and people tried to warn you that this was going to be a thing. When I hear stories about the $2 billion soybean deal with China that fell through for Nebraska due to the tariffs, and then, you know, the closing of migrant farms and all of this stuff, and Montana farmers going bankrupt, it's like, you can't say that people didn't warn you that this was going to be a thing. You just chose not to listen. Did you really think that Daddy Trump winning was going to line your pockets? Sorry to say that the only pockets that are going to get lined are the 1%. Nobody else. Sorry.
To start hearing about red states going broke? Yes, states going broke. So this one today, this red state that voted for Donald Trump is Nebraska. Look at this budget deficit. Look at this, ladies and gentlemen. You want to know how they're thinking about fixing this budget deficit? Increasing taxes in the state, sales tax, or some kind of other tax. Don't forget, the red state voted for Donald Trump. They're also paying in federal taxes and getting nothing for it. They're also paying tariffs, just like you and me, and getting nothing for it. So Nebraska and other red states, just so you know, the top 10 states struggling financially right now, you can Google this, 9 out of 10 of them are red states. Stay tuned for more red states about to go broke.
This isn't just about political, you know? It is a social lesson. When racism drives your vote, your community pays a price. Nebraska and Montana are a proof that prejudice can cost your own future. And now, these red states are reaping a bitter crop of regret, you know? And this is about a larger pattern in American politics. Communities prioritize identity over policy that let buyers dictate their own choices. They end up paying the steepest price when disaster strikes. At the end of the day, no election, no leader, no ideology can protect you from the consequences of your own choice. And for those red states, the lesson is painfully clear, you know? Ignoring reality, clinging to bias, and voting against your own interest can have devastating results. People lose their jobs, their homes, their future, and yet, when faced with the choice between doing what's rational and voting based on fear or prejudice, many of them will always choose fear, you know? Racism is very expensive. And right now, the families and communities of Nebraska and Montana are paying the price. The question is, are they going to learn from it? Or is it too late? Anyway, all ours and them. Because for us, black community, we try to warn them. Not once, not twice, but they chose to ignore us, you know? They chose not to listen to us. They didn't want the idea of a black president being in office. No, they are reaping, you know? They are harvesting what they sow. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Your support really means a lot, and it helps us keep bringing you more insightful content. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.